So I've been climbing since I was about 13 years old. Brought up mainly in trad climbing and traditional lead climbing, and sort of occasionally a few times over the course of a few years would go sport climbing and even ice climbing sometimes. And then about 6 years ago I started doing like more bouldering and taking more of an interest in like getting better and stronger at climbing. And back then, like climbing a five sport climb or a 5 boulder problem in one day was kind of like a real highlight of the day. And with a bit more time on the rock and a little bit of kind of basic training, I started to see like some improvements in my climbing, and was moving away from the 5s and kind of into the 6s and mid 6s, and would occasionally do like a 7A. And it's been a bit of a battle for me to break into the 7s. There have been a few things that over time I've come to realise that I need to get better at. A major one for me is my head game, and it's still not fully there. I just bottled it basically. Built a bit of a belay at the last set of gear and just lowered down off of it. But it's been a bit of a recurring theme for the past few climbs. Coming from a trad climbing background and a little bit of kind of old school style of teaching and mentality, it was drummed into me like really early on that the leader must not fall. That was the old adage, and I think that's kind of where like part of my fear of falling stemmed from. So combined with like natural self-preservation, I had a real issue and a real fear of actually falling off anything, and it's something that I just couldn't rationalise with myself at times. And there have been real moments where I've been properly gripped mid-route and just not able to move because I've sort of been gripped with the fear of coming off. And recently I've kind of tried to force myself to just accept a little bit of a fall when I've been sport climbing. And sport climbing's really helped, I think, address that kind of fear. Not grabbing for the drawers every time I think I'm about to come off, and just accepting little falls to move on to slightly bigger falls has really helped in that mental side of overcoming the fear of falling. And I think, like for me, guerrilla warfare was kind of a turning point as well, because it kind of showed me in my head that I was able to commit to quite a high topping out move, and it wasn't like death on a stick. The past few years have been quite a learning curve in terms of training and actually how to get stronger at climbing, and it's been really fun to see what you can do with your body and how it actually responds to the training. And even things like being more aware of the nutritional side of things. So before I never really even considered what it was that I ate before and after climbing or training had any kind of effect. And I've been using the Crimp app this year, and it's really produced some fantastic gains for me. And combined with just being that little bit more aware of what's going into my body pre and post workout, that's really helped make my strength in climbing come on quite a bit. And it just gives you that kind of confidence to hold on or go for a move when you kind of know you've got that little extra in the power bank or the endurance bank. It's not been all about just making loads of progress and gains over the past few years. A couple of years ago, or for the past couple of years, I've had quite a few injuries. So in 2018 I dislocated my shoulder, not climbing related, fell off an electric skateboard, and then there was a bit of rehab for that, and then it kind of subluxed and kept popping out. So in May 2019 I had surgery to pin it back and actually stabilise the joint. And then rehab was going really well. I started climbing again and actually touching back into 7s. And just as I was kind of feeling like I was making some gains, I popped my A2 pulley in my ring finger. Yeah.
This black stuff, I'm afraid to say, shouldn't really be here. And then this is the tendon. Can you see now the tendon's like here?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So that there is a gap. That's what we call bowstringing. So I'm afraid to say that shouldn't look like that.
It's been a journey marred with a few injuries and taking time out for rehab. The final thing that kind of both of us have really been getting to grips with recently is the whole redpoint and projecting mentality. And I think our founding trad lead climbing ethos has really had an influence on our original approach to sport climbing. We thought everything needed to be treated as an on-site, so we would leave the ground with all the gear and try and place all the quick draws as we went, and if it wasn't done in that style, then it wasn't like a worthy ascent of the route. But like learning a bit more about the redpoint has definitely opened the door to the harder climbs, not having to carry all the draws with you every time, being able to just go up and clip straight into the quick draw in place. And it's been quite weird and quite liberating to actually be able to like let go of your old habits and kind of adopt a new style of thinking and a new ethos. And I really loved like working routes. I love starting a climb and thinking, wow, this feels like mega impossible, and then slowly over time you work out a sequence, work out the beta, and actually it becomes doable and becomes familiar, and yeah, you really get into the climb and start absorbing into it. But I think I wasn't prepared for how absorbed you can actually get in one route, and projecting, it really took over my head and my mind, and when you've got a project on the go and you've worked out the sequence, for the days afterwards all you can think about are the moves, and it's like completely absorbing. So every spare moment is kind of, you're just going through the moves in your head, like remembering all the moves, all the beta, and just like trying your hardest to not forget it so that when you actually tie in, you're actually able to remember all those moves. So yeah, it's been quite a journey so far to try and break into the next grade barrier for me. We're going to go and try our luck at coming up for air at Moat Buttress, which we've been working a couple of days ago. So we've had 2 days rest after working it, and like getting all the moves on it, but obviously not like linking the full thing together for a redpoint. Coming up for air for me had like nearly 3 cruxy bits. The first was quite low down, the very first few moves, and it required getting a low undercut with the left hand, stepping really high, and then reaching up with the right hand to try and get this thumb catch, staying in balance long enough to then go again with the left hand into this really sharp divot. And then from there it's quite long moves on reasonable good juggy holds all the way up to a break below another crux for me. And it meant using the jug holes to stand pretty high up and get a really thin slot crimp, like a mini flake. And from there, twisting my body right round and reaching really high up with the left hand to get quite a bad crimp. And then slapping again to a reasonable good sort of juggy hold. And then you sort of enter into another crux where you're going to reach up with the right hand onto a bad crimp, grab the slope with the left, and then get feet high quick enough to get into this sort of reasonable flake that you can actually get a shakeout on. And from there, the crux just keeps going. So they're like these really thin crimps after the flake. So it's really balancing technical imbalance moves on these sort of small crimps. And I managed to find a small side pull that nobody seemed to be using because I couldn't reach over the bulge. And the bulge is one of the main cruxes, I think, for most people. So I needed something that would actually let me get a little bit higher to reach over the bulge. It felt like a big moment clipping the chains on that 7C. Really stoked to actually kind of break into that next grade. Excited to see how far we can push these grades and whether we can break into the next grade as well.